So my question for you folks is, given the recent town hall episode with Donald Trump, where again, as you have said, Masada, people want to talk about inflation, they want to talk about what's going on with the economy, but there was no looking forward. It was all looking backwards. It was the grievance, the victimization. It wasn't just doubling down, it was quadrupling down, calling January 6th a beautiful day, calling the black police officer that shot Ashley Babbitt as she was trying to threaten congressmen a thug. The list goes on, and I'm not going to go through each one. But the point is, how do you think this affects the 24 campaign? Because even senators, and I'm not talking Lisa McCaffrey and Mitt Romney, the usual people that criticize the president, but Senator Young, Senator Braun from Indiana, Mike Rounds, these are pretty mellow guys that don't usually come out and take a stand on things. So given the fact that all three of us, whether we're irrespective of which party we want to win, don't want Donald Trump as president, how do you think this is going to affect the 24 campaign? And what should the other candidates in the race do? How should they react? Why don't I'll start it with you first, Carrie.
Well, my first pick would be Glenn Youngkin, and he's not running. So, but if we did have a President Trump, I do like his policy. So if he is the nominee, I would vote for him. But I think overall, what was very interesting was actually seeing how the liberal media actually feared the town hall. I think it was actually a win for Trump in a lot of ways. Even Rolling Stone did an article about all the meltdown within CNN about people who felt like the moderator didn't do a good job. And I agree with you, Dave, that the questions were focused on backward looking issues. And that, to me, that's a dereliction of duty. But it's not just CNN. And look, I go on CNN, I have friends over there, but it's a bigger media problem because they're hyper focused and obsessed with January 6th. But January 6th is like very low on the list of what voters actually care about. And so that's a lose-lose. It's a lose for Donald Trump to talk about it. It's a lose for the media to talk about it. And ultimately, the citizens lose. So I agree that the town hall should have been much more forward-looking, but it's like this mutually assured destruction when you have both parties here are, saying things that they shouldn't say and focusing on topics they shouldn't focus on. Like, yeah, why didn't we have a conversation more about inflation? CNN or, lots of media companies, they don't want to talk about inflation because it makes Joe Biden look bad. They don't want to talk about the fact that the average mortgage payment under Joe Biden, this was shocking. The House Commerce Committee put this out, the Republicans. It's gone up by 91% since Joe Biden took office. That's astronomical. The average mortgage payment for the median, which means, everyday families are paying almost 100% more for their mortgage payment than Joe Biden. And yeah, that's what should have been the focus of the town hall. So we're in agreement on that point. I think that when it comes to Ron DeSantis, we're going to see, because he's probably going to declare in 2 weeks, and I'm sure he's going to get a bump. The question is whether or not he's going to be able to, looking back on 2016, what was the playbook? Nobody was consistent in how they were able to take, any successful shots at Trump. So that's where I feel like if DeSantis wanted to distinguish himself, I think he could say, Trump, why didn't you fire Fauci? Why did you shut down the country? Why was I pushing against you as president? And so I think there's some openings, but we'll see. Masada, what do you think?
So to answer your question, I think Americans are in love with reality TV, and Trump is the master. Trump won in 2016 because of all the free publicity and the media that he got. I think at this point in time, I think Americans they love the entertainment. They're tired of the politics. They don't want to fight with their neighbors. They don't want to fight with their friends. Just like in Arizona, the independents called the day and they pushed back against the Trump voters against the Trump candidates. And that's because America is about looking forwards. And I think Trump is busy looking backwards, and he's busy with his own self. And I don't think young people like him, and that's a problem. I mean, I'll give credit where credit is due. He's not my candidate, but he did do some good political things. Like, I am open enough to see what people do as politicians. And I'm more interested in politicians that do things fighting about their character or this or that. I mean, at this point in time, I don't look to politicians as role models, unfortunately. I look more to, rabbis or priests or teachers or first responders. And for me, they're more the people that you can look at as heroes and people who are making a difference. And in terms of 2024, I definitely think that Trump will split the party, because if he's nominated, I don't think he will win, because I think people are tired of the drama as much as they like watching it on TV. And he also, Rupert Murdoch is no longer his friend. The liberal so-called media, I don't think it's liberal, but the media in general, not a fan, but they'll give him the free publicity. But the thing is this, if he's not the nominee, then he will not back the nominee, and he will split the party, and that will ensure a Joe Biden win. So I think the Republicans have a lot of work to do to pick the right candidate if they actually want to win. And they have a good platform and they have good ideas. And this is the truth. But I think they need to find candidates that actually represent all ages and are forward thinking. I think we really need to look forward. And in terms of some candidates, like, I just wish they would stop harping on gays and lesbians and transgender. I think those issues, again, backward thinking, abortion issues, backward thinking. We don't want to go backwards. I think we want to go forwards.
Well, as I always say, there's the direct Trump wreckage, which is the subverting the rule of law and inciting the insurrection and the nativism and the grievance and the divisiveness and all that stuff. And then there's the indirect wreckage, which is people like Ron DeSantis, who used to be pragmatic, center-right or maybe conservative, but, they were about governing, and that have gone off the deep end with social issues, and, 12-year-olds can carry guns and all that. And then there's also the negativeness, the negativity in the country. And so I think that two things: if you're going to take a bully on, you got to punch him in the nose. And I just don't understand how these candidates, like Nikki Haley the other day, would not even criticize him for being convicted for sexual assault by his peers. And 40% of the country just yawns. The bar has become so low. And I also carry, you say, well, I like his policies, even though I don't like him, so I'll support him if he's the nominee. You've said that you wouldn't support David Duke if he were the nominee. And believe me, I'm not in any way trying to downplay how odious David Duke is. He is a reprehensible human being who has done despicable things. But is someone who is a KKK grand wizard 30 years ago, that's terrible. But so is trying to overturn a free and fair election. So is threatening to bring back Mike Flynn as your security advisor, as wanting to suspend the Constitution. So I just don't get this. Well, his policies are so good, don't worry, it's worth having him as president. No, it's not, because we may not have a democracy. And yes, you can say I'm being dramatic, but he's out there. He's saying it in spades.
Do you want me to respond? I mean, I think there's not even, it's night and day. I don't think comparing him to David Duke is the same thing. I think it's oranges and pineapples. And I agree, he went too far in the things that he said for the election, but he never once.
Things he did. He didn't just say them, he did them.
But he never called for violence. But again, look, voters don't care about January 6th. They don't. So as much as you want to talk about it, Dave, the voters don't care about it. Then the assault conviction, the fact that the New York legislature changed the law to go after Donald Trump, it was just baldly political. That's why people don't buy it.
See, again, this is always the thing. It's the system. It's the environment. It's not Trump's fault. It's always he's the victim. It's like Jerry Sandusky. You have 25 people that are accusing you of something. One or two of them are probably telling the truth. If it's one or two, fine. But the fact that he would call this woman a whack job after he was just convicted. My point is, this man is off the rails, and any guardrails, any people like Mattis or John Kelly that were there in the first term, any incentive to behave because he needs to be reelected, all that stuff is going to be gone. He's telling us what he's going to do. Okay, so whatever, and I agree, some of his policies were good. I give credit where it's due. But this is a risk to our democracy. And yes, I think it is fair. What David Duke did was different, okay? But they're both equally odious in their own ways. So I think there needs to be a wake up here. And I'm hoping that someone's going to come out and punch Trump in the nose. And the good news is we still have a long way to go before the election. And I'm still confident that someone else will emerge. Just as, by the way, being fair and balanced, I hope Joe Biden will be talked out of running, because the fact that he's running, I think, is an abomination as well, as we've talked about. So I will leave the last word with you, ladies.
Well, I'd like to say that, you know what, I do think it's time for some fresh leadership. I think we need fresh ideas in this country. I think we need to be forward-looking. I happen to like Joe Biden, much to the chagrin of my Republican friends who don't understand why, who I hear from all the time. But I do think that we really need to focus on the future. We really need to focus on social issues in a positive way. We need to focus on the economy. I know a lot of people like Trump because Wall Street did tremendously well under him. But I think we really need to step back from the politics and focus on the people around us and focus on the policies that we want moving forward. And maybe it would be really wise if we stopped looking at politicians as entertainment and just went to like Netflix or Bravo for entertainment and let politics be boring again. I think that would be a good thing for the United States.
I agree with that. I think that it's a toxic mix of celebrity and politics, and it should be focused on the policy and the substance. I do think, though, that part of why Trump won was because, and this is something, the root of the word democracy is demos, which means people. And over, I just hear this enormous disconnect between the liberal elites. I'm talking about the media. I'm talking about Hollywood. I'm talking about academia. The power brokers who set cultural norms in this country are so overwhelmingly liberal and leftist. The fact that we're debating whether or not a 250-pound, 6'2" male should be allowed while having an erection in a sorority, that's disgusting. And the fact that that's like, it's like the emperor has no clothes. That's, and then the statements that this individual made talking about being a trailblazer, it's clear this person is just exploiting this. But that's what the left, and that's at a university. That's like the most educated populace. So when people say, the right shouldn't talk about culture stuff, it's like, I'm sorry, but the culture stuff came on our doorstep because the elite norm setters in our country are so divorced from common sense. That's why Trump won. So how about the root of democracy is demos? How about you respect the people? How about you respect the common sense of everyday people and you don't impose this insane Marxist ideology on us, and then we'll get some normal politicians again.
Well, Trump won because, first of all, the Democrats discarded those voters, so they deserve part of the blame. And also, there was a perfect storm with Hillary being a terrible candidate, and it's very hard for someone to be reelected and then someone from the same party to win a so-called third term. It's only happened twice in history. So those are the reasons that Trump won. And if you look again, yes, there's a couple of examples, but how many, maybe one or two or three examples in the entire country where men are competing in women's sports? Now, I agree it's totally wrong, but again, this is false equivalency where you're trying to compare that to a man who's openly said that he doesn't like democracy, that he's an authoritarian, that he won't criticize Putin. He won't even say whom he wants to win the war. So I think that it's up to the American people to make the choice. And frankly, it's up to the Democratic Party to do what they do best when they win, and that's talk about kitchen table issues, not talk about issues that a lot of people feel, correctly or not, are woke issues. So on that, I think we're going to have to leave it there. But again, a great conversation, and it is so great to have Masada with us again. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Practically Political. I'm Dave Spencer.
And I'm Carrie Sheffield. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Masada Siegel. A pleasure to be with you both.